All right, good morning. I'm going to call to order this August 17th, 2021 Hancock County Commissioners Special Meeting. Gentlemen, I'd direct your attention to the agenda and ask if there is any adjustments.
I'm going to move to approve the amended agenda as presented with the exception of removing item 4A.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to remove 4A. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Any other adjustments to the agenda? Your motion was to approve the agenda with those.
With
Okay, all right.
remove all in one.
Very good. Our agenda is in order. I would now move to agenda item for public comment. Is there anybody out there this morning that would like to make a public comment? Rebecca, you help in case there's somebody up there that I don't see.
I don't see any answers.
Does not appear there's any public comment this morning. Then I'd go to agenda item 2. A motion is in order, gentlemen.
Move to approve the minutes of the August 3rd regular meeting as presented.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Item 3.
Good morning, Commissioners. This morning, I'm proud to request and ask for approval to hire Monica Cease. Monica is here before you. Monica, the 3 commissioners, Commissioner Perry, Commissioner Clark, Commissioner Wambacher. Monica is going to be our new finance director for the county of Hancock. And I ask for your support.
I'm going to move to hire Monica Cease of Ellsworth as finance director at an annual salary of $55,000 effective August 28th, 2021.
Seconded.
Any discussion?
Congratulations, and we look very forward to you joining us.
Thank you, and I look forward to it as well.
Hearing no further discussion, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you.
Morning.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Thank you very much. You're free to go. Yes, ma'am. One sheet.
Okay, Kitty, good morning.
Morning. Okay, in your packet, you should have a report I provided, just a quick summary of activities since we last met. Do you have any questions about that?
What's the likelihood that Senator Collins can get us some kind of reassurance? So
I've heard that.
you've heard.
I have heard that. I was going to wait until we got to that item.
Okay, very good. Yeah, I won't push it.
Okay.
Yep. Gentlemen, anything else with regards to Kitty's report?
My only question was, you had listed in the report, there's 3 applications. Where are we at in the last application?
Yep, in process this week, and since this report, I received 3 more, so we have 4 more that are in process.
Great.
And I didn't quite hear the question, John.
She has listed that there's been 3 applications.
Oh, yeah.
And we only have 2 that we've.
Yeah.
And we can find the pending ones on our report.
You will.
In other words, the last two are after the spreadsheet was done.
Correct.
Yeah.
Find an issue.
Gentlemen, you want to accept her report or just acknowledge the fact that we received it?
We can, how about I'll move to accept and file the report by Ms. Barbie as presented.
Seconded.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries.
And then secondly, Commissioners, we are pleased to request from the Hancock County Commissioners their official approval to award the following nonprofit organizations the listed funding as part of the American Rescue Plan nonprofit grant program. First, for home for Bucksport, Maine, $10,000 for revenues lost due to cancellation of fundraising events during 2020. And secondly, Friends in Action of Ellsworth, $10,000 for revenues lost in 2020 from fundraising events that could not be held.
Okay, gentlemen, this is our first opportunity to go through this approval process, and we discussed it again this morning. Just to remind you, the grants committee reviews and ultimately approves or disapproves the grant request. Once it's approved, it goes to finance, checks are cut, the checks are held by the county administrator until we formally acknowledge those. So we're not really approving, it's been approved by the grants committee, but what we're doing this morning, Kitty, is acknowledging the grants that have been approved, the grant awards made by the grant committee.
So, in my opinion, this is a big deal. I'd like to take motion for each one.
I was going to suggest that.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to move to acknowledge the award of an ARP revenue loss grant to Home of Bucksport in the amount of $10,000 as awarded by the Grant Awards Committee.
I believe we have somebody here.
Seconded.
Okay, motion is made and seconded. And if there is somebody, if you could come forward, please. Okay, I'm going to move the question. All in favor of the approval?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. It is our pleasure that we're able to, I understand when I read the application that there's substantial losses over and above 10,000. I'm sorry that we couldn't help you more, but we're trying to spread that around a little bit around the county, but we are pleased that we can at least assist you with this $10,000.
Yeah, Scott, if you could, Scott.
Yep, I'm gonna ask the commission if they want to present that, and while they're doing that, could you just state your names in the microphone for the record?
Rosaline Moore, Assistant Director.
Thank you.
Mary Mahan, Finance Director for Home Incorporated.
Very good. Ladies, if you can come forward for a little photo up here, just stand right here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There again.
Thank you.
We hope there's a check in there.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Still drop it.
Dan, I'm going to move to
Are you
acknowledge.
watching this?
Oh.
They're
I
doing
am-
photo ops with the nonprofit. They're giving them money to $10,000 to home individually, and they're having a check.
Can you,
Yeah, so
you,
what more do you need to know?
Andy, can you hear us?
Hold on.
Andy,
Yes, sir.
can you please mute?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to move to acknowledge the award of an ARP revenue loss grant to Friends in Action of Ellsworth in the amount of $10,000 as awarded by the Grant Awards Committee.
Seconded.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. I understand Joe Cooper is here this morning on behalf of Friends in Action.
Joe, I'm sorry, I'm embarrassed.
I know, that's
recognize you.
okay.
I was looking, I can't find
It's been a few years.
Come right here and face the camera, show her that great big check.
Thank
Very
you.
good.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
Also, I would just say that I reviewed that application and they also suffered substantially more than that. And so we're pleased that we can at least offset some of that.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Kitty, all set with the grant approvals? Okay. Gonna go on to 4C, Scott. I think that's,
Yep. Well, you have the spreadsheet submitted in your records. If there are any other questions, that was where we left it last time, that's what you requested for information. I think we've covered all the bases and looking for your approval on it this morning.
gentlemen, globally, we have to make a decision on whether or not we want to pay, has this pay. And then I would ask, do you think it's that we need to weigh in on who gets what, because there are differing amounts here for some people based upon the amount of time they worked here or something?
I feel like Scott has already worked and got things prorated, depending on when there's issues for their length of service, time put in. So to me,
And if I could just input on that just for a moment, Commissioner Wambacher, we talked about part-time, and I think we had kind of unofficially discussed a certain amount. And then as I got going down through things and with prorating some others, I kind of took that same process. And so, for instance, really in the jail, all I did was took the total amount of hours that were available during the 15-month period, took their total amount of hours worked and got a percentage and applied it to, so I applied it to the stipend that the full-timers, that the others are getting as well. I just want to make sure that you knew that.
So I agree with John, so I'm gonna make this motion. I'm gonna move to approve the hazard pay period of March 2020 through June of 2021, and to authorize payment from ARP funds as presented and recommended in this hazard pay project plan dated August 17th, 2021 by the county administrator. And that's, what's in here is based on that recommendation, which I agree with. So that's the reason for that motion. Should cover both of the items that we needed dealt with, right?
The problem is that your motion would not allow him to deviate from what he's presented here this morning. In other words, the amounts.
But the amounts,
I can already see, I won't call it an error, but I can already see an issue here that may need reconsideration. And so,
okay,
I'd like to somehow craft a motion that approves as this pay to the extent the county administrator believes is proportional to the criteria and the amount of time they worked, or something like that, so that we can still massage these numbers if we think it's necessary.
I took this recommendation as that massaging had been done.
It had, so I guess I would ask, is this something that's appropriate to discuss?
Yeah, I don't see the reason not, and it has to do with Chris Sargent. Chris Sargent only worked 5 months of this 16-month period.
Correct.
And you've got the full 5,000 for him.
I apologize, that it probably was updated after you've gotten that should be,
Has that been corrected?
that has been corrected, yes.
See, and there's another reason, Paul, that we don't have the updated, corrected,
It is correct in the spreadsheet, isn't it?
Well, that's,
I'm looking at Chris Sargent is $5,000 on the spreadsheet I have online PDF. Are you looking at a hard copy? What's a hard copy?
I'm trying to find them. I'm sorry.
It's under the patrol deputies.
yeah, I thought I changed that, but
Excuse me, Commissioners, is there any opportunity for any comment on this?
You want to comment before we approve it?
I would like to, yes.
Sure,
That's okay, sir.
Yeah, hang on, just as soon as we solve this when,
No, in my spreadsheet, it has not been changed and needs to. Yeah.
so, and I haven't gone through this whole thing. I would like to have the ability to look through this and make sure that there are not other adjustments that they didn't think of or has been overlooked, Paul. So
I didn't realize, so my motion is actually, if it's all right with the second, sounds like it needs to come out and we need a final spreadsheet at some point.
if you agree that Scott should have more time to massage these figures and for accuracy before he confirms them, yes.
So how
So
about this?
if you'd withdraw, John will withdraw, we can start over again.
Yeah, so how about we only take, move to approve the hazard pay period. I think that's something we can take action on at this point, of March 2020 through June 2021, period.
Second that. Okay, so that motion is on the floor, simply approve has this pay for that time period. And now I'll entertain comments from the floor. Glenn, you're welcome to come to the mic, please.
Appreciate it, sir. Glenn Mosier, and many of you may know me as the city manager for Ellsworth, and also the police chief. And I'm not here today in either one of those roles. I'm really here today representing first responders, all of Hancock County. And I feel that the precedent that's being set here with the commission in the hazard duty pay for first responders and others in the county government is a warranted one. I think that it's very much appropriate and I think it's well deserved. But I think the issue and the precedent that's being set here is one that other communities within Hancock County can certainly not meet. And we have first responders throughout the entire Hancock County that served diligently throughout the entirety of the pandemic and continue to serve their communities, communities which you gentlemen represent. And I think that it's a disservice to those first responders throughout the county to not offer hazard duty pay to those individuals as well as the members here that work for the county specifically. Most of those communities cannot afford to pay hazardous duty pay. Some of those individuals in a lot of those communities are in fact volunteers and don't receive any money at all. But yet day in and day out, they responded to the calls. They went and offered whether it be medical assistance or in the fire and EMS service or police service throughout the county. And so I would just encourage you, as you talk about this subject and you think about paying individuals specifically within the county government that have worked throughout the pandemic, that you consider all of those outside of the county government who did the same job as well and aren't going to get the opportunity because the communities just can't afford it.
Glenn, why can't they? I mean, all communities are getting some kind of ARP money. Why wouldn't they make a portion of that available? Because you understand my position that this is a priority for me. I mean, considering my background, but why can't municipalities who are also receiving ARP funds set aside a portion for hazardous pay for their community first responders?
Well, I'm sure you're well aware, the communities, the majority of the communities, the dollar figures are significantly less than what the county is receiving. Ellsworth, for example, will be receiving just over $400,000 in ARP funding for the first section, an additional $400,000. If we were to pay hazardous duty in the amount of $5,000 to each of our first responders and fire and police, that would consume virtually all of that $400,000. And you're certainly not going to get community support to expend those funds in that fashion. So the money is meant to help the community. The money is meant to help the small businesses and individuals who have suffered from the effects of COVID. And so we have a plethora of options and things to utilize those funds for. Certainly hazardous duty pay is one that we as a city will consider. And we will certainly put forward to the council to consider as that funding becomes available. But one, we haven't received the funds from the state yet, and two, when we do, it's a much smaller piece of the pie. And Ellsworth is by far getting the most out of any community. So when you get into the smaller communities, if you consider certainly police departments or volunteer fire service, you know, their piece of the pie is so small that if they expended it solely on hazard duty pay, which some of them I suppose could, they're not going to have any money left for any other benefits to the citizens. And, you know, that I think, and this is, again, entirely my opinion, but the funding that was administered to the county for your discretion to spend throughout is exactly that. It's for the entirety of the county and all the citizens within Hancock County. And I certainly think that the program that you set up for nonprofits to apply for grants is a wonderful opportunity for all nonprofits throughout the county. And I just think that inclusive mentality of spending this money and providing not just for a select few, but providing for all of the county is the appropriate course of action.
What about the possibility that if we gave all first responders in Hancock County the sums that we're giving here, that it could eat up all our money? I mean, that's the same as the city of Ellsworth. I mean, why would that be okay for us to eat all our money up for first responders, but it's not okay for the city to use some of theirs?
Well, I think that can be addressed in a couple of ways. One is, it might be a situation where the dollar amounts need to be adjusted so that they're appropriate and so that they're not an overburden on the total amount that was provided to the county. So that's, that's potentially one suggestion or solution to that. And alternatively, the dollar figure that the county is getting is, as we've said, significantly larger. And what my idea is what you could do is similar to the program you have set up for nonprofits. You could have communities that could apply, if you will, or request of the commissioners to provide hazardous duty pay to their first responders. And leave it up to the individual communities to reach out and take the effort to do that. And then as you're considering today, hazard duty pay for the county employees, you could also consider hazard duty pay for other first responders throughout communities in Hancock County. So I think if it has to, and which is why I wanted to address you before you ruled on it, because I think there may have to be some adjustments made if you do consider expanding it to all of Hancock County and all first responders, because you're absolutely correct. The dollar figure would be significant. But I think the dollar amount that you're looking at now with what information I got from County Administrator Atkins is the single dollar figure you're looking at now is significant. Is a significant portion, and certainly, again, would consume all of any other community who was looking to do that. So I just think in fairness, and again, in the guise of this money is intended for all of the citizens of Hancock County, many of whom are not served directly by the employees of the Hancock County Sheriff's Department or other employees of the city directly, of the county directly. They're served by their municipalities or their towns, that it just, in order to be fair to all, there needs to be consideration as well.
Gentlemen?
Well, the one thing that I'd say on it is it's something to consider. I would say maybe there's some kind of possibility of a matching amount where the municipality, municipalities being willing to put forward for hazard pay, whether the county will be able to respond in kind, at least to some degree. That would be something to consider. But obviously, it's a big question. All of them brought up.
Well, it's a very good point, and one of my reservations in the very beginning was similar to this, but I overcame it. There was a whole host of reasons to overcome it. I want to outline them all, but there's some pay disparities. There's a lot of other things to consider. But your point is well taken, and John's point is well taken. Maybe that's, and one reason we went down this road is it's specifically spelled out in the legislation. And, we, I don't know if compelled is the right word, but, we felt that, we needed to stay within the spirit of that legislation. And that was an attempt to do that. But your point is certainly well taken.
Well, I can tell you that we've always said from the start that somehow we were going to work with our communities and whatnot. But there's always been a hesitancy to do anything yet, because first, for me personally, whatnot, I'd like to see what the community is going to do with their money. I mean, if they have some off-the-wall priorities and whatnot, it really is a disincentive for us to, to contribute towards these communities. But I would be very willing, at some point to discuss, as John said, I think that's an excellent way to trickle down some of our funds to the communities and whatnot in a matching grant program to see if the communities find that hazardous pay can be a priority with them. I would certainly willing to consider that. So I'd like to leave it, gentlemen, that we wait. What you guys got to do? File suit to get your money from the governor there? What the hell's going on? I mean,
Well, she filed for a second 30-day extension, which was the final. So she has no additional extensions to apply for. So we're anticipating September.
September to get it? Well, very good. You must be in discussions though with what you're going to do with yours, huh?
Yeah, and actually, we met with County Michigan, Atkins, Scott, and also Kitty. And, one of the highest priorities for the city of Ellsworth, which I also understand is one for the county as well, is broadband expansion, which is a hugely expensive endeavor. And certainly when you're dealing with the city of Ellsworth and actually throughout most of Hancock County with the rural nature of what we have to overcome, it's a wildly expensive, thing for us to be considering. It's something that's, on probably the top of everyone's priority list just because of the need and because of what's played out in the pandemic with, remote learning and remote work and everything really causing it to be critically important for us to offer that infrastructure to our communities. So, and again, when the city of Ellsworth is looking at $400,000, that's really just scratching the surface of what we'll need to do broadband expansion in reality, which is again part of the reason why we reached out to Scott and to begin the dialogue with not only Scott but other communities, because I believe that in order for it to be cost effective, as well as for the county and some of these funds to be distributed for that purpose, it's much more effective if we work together and if all communities come together with some sort of plan as to how we can make broadband expansion as affordable as possible and reasonable to all of the communities. So that's one of the priorities, obviously, in the city of Ellsworth, as you all know, because you're here on a daily basis. We have much other additional needs as well. We have a lot of small businesses that have suffered. We have a lot of individuals, who have suffered through job loss and other things. So, we're hopeful that we can put some of the money towards working towards broadband expansion and working with the community, with the county and other communities to make that happen. But at the same time, making sure that we have some funds available to support those businesses and individuals who have suffered. So,
Gentlemen, I'd like to leave Glenn with the reassurance that we're going to come back and revisit hazardous pay for some form perhaps, and collaboration on other projects that.
Well, one of the challenges we have is, with all due respect, you represent one community in the county, and there are many others, and that was part of your point. So, that's a daunting task. That's not something that's easily done. We have one community before us making a valid point, but if we were to roll this out, as we have here for countywide, it would probably be an impossible task or close to it. So do we, do we scuttle this because of the point that was made? I'm not ready to go there. I'm certainly am at, thinking this over, giving the information that he's given us, because again, I think it's valid. But there are some counties that thought about, not taking the funds because of, things like this, issues like this, disparities between, and I'm not there yet, but I certainly am understanding the points. And, sometimes it's very difficult to be fair across the board, and I don't know how we go about trying to accomplish that.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, first of all, I appreciate where Glenn's coming from. But for our employees, I kind of feel I need to stand up and just point this out that, in fairness and disparities and that whole conversation, there is no disparity as to how much appreciation is shown for every emergency personnel throughout the entire county, would be fire, police, emergency services. And I think that the county departments in Hancock, whether it be the Hancock County Sheriff's Department, the jail, the RCC, those have faithfully served the entire county for the last 15 months. And I will tell you, and you know this, Commissioner Parity may not know this as well as the other two commissioners. We have done some instrumental work here with regards to pay scales. Because obviously, I think if you look at the pay scales, they're much closer now, but there is a huge disparity in the pay scales. And I just think that this is one way that the commissioners, without using county tax dollars, can thank our force. And as they pointed out today, that I think you've been assured that in the future, if there's a community that is willing to invest and make this as part of their spending of our money, so I think the commission would be willing to hear something. But I just really want to emphasize the point is that I think our staff fully deserve this, have earned it, and I'm not saying anybody's saying otherwise. And with the pay disparity, I just really wanted to bring that up, that this is just one more way that we kind of help close that gap. Thank you for listening.
And I mentioned pay disparity because I am aware of some of it.
Yes.
Not certainly is.
It's significant in many areas, it is, or was.
It is, and the other thing is, this is what we can control. We're not in charge of the other communities, and I think if other communities came forward, they would be, with a plan similar to what Commissioner Wambacher touched on. It would get added to the spreadsheet, and would get weighed as just like some of these other projects. But you've made some valid points. I'm certainly, I understand them, I see them. It's just something that doesn't look like we're ready to take action on it this time. So we have a little time to mull over the points you brought.
Well, I very much appreciate your time, and to Scott's point, I'm certainly not here discouraging you or attempting to convince you otherwise that the county employees, sheriff's department, and likewise aren't worthy of these funds. I just simply felt that it was important that somebody outside of the county come forward and just request and just plant the seed that perhaps there are others equally as valuable to the county and equally as deserving of these funds. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Glenn. Gentlemen, we have a motion on the floor to accept has this pay and the amount has this pay for our county employees.
No, actually, the motion on the floor is to approve that hazardous pay period.
Yeah, okay. Approve has this pay. And we understand that to mean
and my guess is that this spreadsheet will be further refined and come back to us.
Yeah, I've already fixed the one in question. But, if you need additional time to review the rest of
do
it.
you want to approve these amounts?
No, my motion right now is that has this pay period of March 2020 to June 2021. And then I just, I think that,
When you say come back to us, in other words, at some point, you'll just share this information with us, or you'll come back?
no,
to us
it'll come back on an agenda.
As a,
This spreadsheet in final form, and we'll take action on it, or not take action, one or the other, but.
do you want to approve the amounts of this sheet?
I will approve the amount, so let the sheet be adjusted. That
Today?
Scott has adjusted.
She's,
Have you had time to go down through it?
I don't know.
Well, then,
Okay, well,
go ahead.
there was another question with, I'd assume that there was, other than with the one individual that we questioned, but there is a question with, you'll see them in orange, with a question with regards to an employee at the airport, do the SO security. Recognition of doing the same job through a vendor. And a discussion with the SO, I believe they're on, that they were, Chief Deputy Kane indicated that they were in favor of that. And I believe the only other question is, our UT supervisor, Mr. Billings, and I think the question would be is, that's covering the UT. Personally, I feel that he's kept up his duties and deserves it just like any other county employee.
So I guess mine is a question. What's in yellow or orange? Those amounts, those are your recommendation.
Yeah, so the yellow are items that are deviate from the standard 5,000, 2,500.
Yeah, so
I
I
just
think,
I want to show you my formula and my methodology, how I come up with that amount. And again, if they generally work 16 out of 40 hours, you take that percentage, multiply it by the stipend amount.
so my original motion that we tried, I did look at this and I looked at your methodology and I agreed with your recommendation. I just want to be sure
Okay.
that what you were recommending is in the yellow and is what's on the sheet.
Yes.
You said yes.
Yes, and my apologies again. The one error is the one that was made, that was pointed out, and I fixed that based off of time, sir.
Is there, I mean, I don't see an emergency here that can't wait 2 weeks. Why? Mr. Chair, you said, you wanted to look at this a little more. Is there any reason not to have this show up on the next agenda for action?
Right.
Because I personally don't see the emergency.
Well,
I don't think we should approve it if not everybody is
Got everybody
chance to
comfortable.
scrutinize it.
Right.
To me, this should be,
well,
Everybody should-
the bottom line though is that no matter what, you're going to approve whatever Scott suggests as being the final figures.
yeah, but we should have a final figure and agree on the final figure.
Well, and we could be very close to that. Do you want to do this today?
We can put it off.
Sure, we have employees out there who'd love to have that in hand. All right, then Scott, let's work on this, refine this to everybody's satisfaction, I guess, and bring it back to the next meeting for approval.
Okay.
Okay,
Well, I mean, I don't mean to hash this over, but I studied this, I agreed with this. I would be ready to take action, but your point was that you hadn't had a chance to fully go over it, and I would feel much more comfortable if everybody had gone over it. That's my only point.
Right.
And I think doing it next meeting would allow that to happen.
and that's, I think, with general consensus, that's what we're going to do.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
So we need to vote on that, on the pay period, right?
Okay, we ready to call the vote? All those in favor of the motion on the floor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those, are you? Aye. Motion carries. Okay, let's, before we move along, and I don't want to overtax Kitty. I'm not sure if it's her responsibility, or, I mean, it could be hers or yours, Scott, but, I'm just wondering, how do we, after September, how do we start getting an idea of what the communities are doing with their funds? I mean, it could be very haphazard for us to have our own sources, but I'm just wondering if somehow, would that,
One thing I noticed is that we got our funds and we're moving along because we got our funds. Communities have not gotten their funds and can't move along because of that.
Right.
So it's very difficult for us to work with them or them work with us because we're not all at the same point.
but my point was that at some point they'll get their money and they'll start being diligent about deciding what to do with that. And I'd like to know personally, and I think we as a board, because the commission should know officially what the status is of each community's efforts to spend that money. And that's what I'm trying to find out. So Scott and Kitty?
Yeah, I'll kind of lead into letting Kitty answer this, but I think your answer is in maybe one of the next couple of topics of discussion. You have a letter in your
Was the letter?
packets
Yes.
to
Okay,
the municipalities, and I think that generally opens that door for conversation and states that we understand you're not ready, or we're willing to listen. Talk to us.
Well, and, you know, the other thing is that they're just not where we are, so it is conceivable that we act so fast, you know, and we're trying to be efficient and be on top of it, and, you know, I think we're doing a heck of a job doing it. But we may be doing it in other communities a disservice by being on top of it, because they're not able to be on top of it yet. And they have, the same legislation affects them. You know,
Right, which I,
the subject of the hazard pay is what opened my eyes to this, not the subject, but the process.
But they may not have received their check, but they know the amount. I mean, Scott knows, Glenn knows that 800 some odd thousand
Yeah.
for us. So
yeah, there's a spreadsheet.
I cannot believe there hasn't been some discussion about what are we going to do with that money when we get it? And so they are behind us in that they don't have that money in hand. But at some point, they're going to start making some definite decisions on that. And I'd like to know, we as a commission, how can we find out what they're doing and what they're thinking about and so on? And that's my question, really.
I think your point is very well taken. I mean, we had our final broadband conversation yesterday, and it became just abundantly clear that these towns, if they're gonna even hope to affect broadband, that money's gone, right? So they've got some serious planning and decision-making to say, what are we gonna do and how are we gonna do it? So yeah, I totally agree that this is not gonna be easy decisions for them. Or are they gonna pull out a list that they made 2 years ago and say, look, we always said we wanted to do this, right?
So is it unreasonable for us to ask that perhaps a spreadsheet with each town there and just a little quip about this is the cream that's rising to the top of that, discussion, and you know what I mean? So.
Well, I think to open that discussion is this letter.
Exactly.
Which I've been very adamant about, let's get this letter out, because this, I think this lets them know. I think you made a great point. This is probably one of the first times since I can remember during my tenure here, that, the commission is, you're on top of things. And when I'm talking about a global type issue, such as the ARP monies. So I think we need to communicate that to kind of help dispel some of this, well, we're just gonna go out and spend it willy-nilly. Because that's not the case. Put that in. Help me on that too. But so this letter, I think, is very important to get out to open the dialogue. And then when they start talking, you're exactly right, Commissioner Clark. Kitty's got the spreadsheet, and that's when we can start jotting these things down. I really think the commission, the communities, they need to know that the commission, especially with broadband, is here to assist and have some resources as best we can. But them spending their monies is an important decision for them individually and for them to decide. And along that, as Kitty will allude to in broadband later, there are many more resources. I mean, they just can't print this money fast enough, right? And there are some other resources that are going to ease the burden that will definitely ease, I don't take care of the whole thing, of broadband coming down the pipeline, which will help communities, I think, decide, not panic, think I gotta save the whole thing for broadband and I don't have anything else I can do with it. I don't believe that's completely true at this point.
Well, and, you know, just reading the newspapers, I don't think communities have been, you know, you're right, Commissioner Clark, that they're, you know, they're thinking about it, but they're not even sure they're gonna get it yet. So they're not expending a lot of effort and, you know, I see that and understand that.
Mhm.
So I've been wrestling in my head as we're, you know, trying to figure it out. On top of that, there's probably legislation changes that are gonna take place that may leverage funds even further.
Right.
So we have to be careful that we haven't expended our funds prior to that happening, so.
Right.
Well, I didn't mean to get into this.
Well, no, it's important.
Yeah.
All I'm really saying is that Kitty and Scott, help us stay informed. As you hear of a community who is making some concrete decisions about how they're gonna spend their money, see that we get that information so that we can understand.
Absolutely.
I'd like to see it in some kind of thing, so we can look right down through it, like a spreadsheet, and we can see what the communities are, what's on that final list of priorities, something like that.
I'm not sure the letter will do that trick 100%.
I didn't think so
I
either.
do think
I agree with the
follow-up's
letter.
gonna be required, because I think they might look at that and say, yep, county wants our money, right? So so I think we're gonna need to really do some follow-up.
Well, and conversely, you know, we may say they want our money,
Exactly,
you know, so
exactly.
that's why
Glenn,
I'm wondering if we're not rushing this conversation a little bit. I mean, to be, you know, there's two sides to it, and I personally, hearing, you know, Ellsworth's comments and, you know, a little bit from, you know, I think you're gonna touch on from Senator Collins' office. You know, I'm not seeing that these are decisions we're gonna be making the next two meetings. I think it's, you know, 6 months, a year from now. If we're lucky.
No, this letter will not, nor was it intended to complete. It's to open a dialogue.
Yeah,
That's the only way you're gonna get the information that you wish to have.
yeah.
And we need to be careful with that information because there may be some that, you know, for instance, I'm aware of a couple of ideas, but they haven't got their money yet, they haven't voted on it. So I don't really want to, you know, spell that, put into public information and void that trust. So I think there's a balance here that needs to happen as well, but continuing conversations most definitely.
but
That's
when I look at what we've talked about so far and whatnot, you could do a spreadsheet on what we're thinking about. I mean, we've already talked about broadband, we've already,
Oh, yeah,
you know what I mean? And so if a community in a public meeting says, you know, I'd like to make broadband a priority, okay, so now we know what they're thinking, you know what I'm saying? And that's all really I'm asking is how do we stay informed as to what the communities are contemplating about doing with theirs? That's all. I don't need,
yeah.
That's what we hired Kitty.
Yeah, exactly.
She'll keep us informed,
I
on
will,
top of it.
I will.
Yes, and let
all
her-
right. So let's move on then to Morning Dennis, the accessible entrance project. And that's the one that Kitty has told us she has sent along to Susan Collins' office in hopes that somebody down there can bless that,
Yes.
give us some reassurance that that's an appropriate use of those funds. So, because there's no timeline of that, is it, Kitty? I mean,
So, sorry,
no.
the short and long answer is at this time, they won't bless it. They don't feel it's a use of the eligible use of the funds. However, they made some really good points. We're working with an interim rule, right? final rule has not been passed and will not, the final bill has not been passed, won't be until September. So part of what they said, kind of echoes what you gentlemen just said, is that take your time. Okay, no rush, right? Things are going to change. Secondly, they said that Senator Collins is actually advocating to get into some legislation, more flexibility around this money so that a project like this, in fact, could be eligible. And thirdly, they indicated that use of the funds could be utilized to hire an attorney to research any project that was questionable or not sure of. That one, okay, I get it, but an attorney is probably only going to be as well versed as we are, theoretically, right? Unless they have an inside scoop. But that was basically their recommendation, is don't rush. September's coming when you can really get some better concrete answers.
Did you say that their initial reaction was, this doesn't look like it's eligible? Oh, okay. Well,
And then it was a but.
okay, so if there was any hesitancy before,
I'd like to know what is. Is there a project that is considered?
I really, my opinion, because it has infrastructure written over it, I mean, that's the piece that probably they don't. They're looking at that versus the mitigation piece of it.
It's not
where-
air purifiers, it's
so if it's been water sewer infrastructure, then it clearly, well,
potentially.
Potentially, but they didn't, they certainly didn't say walk away from it. They said, hold on. We're trying to get more flexibility into the final law.
So Kitty, what is, with regards to today, were we going to select an architect?
Well, we're looking to take action on the recommendation, based on what we're just hearing. I don't know what you think's going to be.
That's my, that would have been my question to Kitty, this is a chicken and the egg. I mean, obviously, if the project gets approved, is eligible, we need to hire an architect to design it. The flip side is we need an architect to tell us what the ballpark figure is for it, before we even want to decide if we want to proceed, so. And if we hire an architect to decide, to look into it, to give us the ballpark figure, it either gets determined uneligible, or we decide it's more money than we want to spend. That money for that architect is not reimbursable from the ARP, is it?
Is an architect considered a consultant? Because consultants are certainly eligible. And they
This would-
spell
this-
that out.
That would be his job, is to consult with us on the cost of the ballpark figure. So I mean, if we could convince somebody that he was acting as a consultant.
I mean, Senator Collins' office did clearly say, remember that lawyers, attorneys, consultants are very much eligible to map out these projects.
Well, that gives me,
Well, they're an architect by type.
they what?
They're an architect by type. And architects do certain tasks. I'm wondering, I don't want to stretch. And I'm wondering, again, we have a recommendation here. I think we'd be expending by choosing an architect, we're not expending funds yet.
Anything beyond today.
Yeah, anything beyond today.
Is
So,
on development.
yeah, so I don't have a problem of selecting an architect, but I do have a problem with expending funds before we know.
Well, we would be expending funds if we treated our architect as a consultant to give us a ballpark figure. And that would expenditure would start today.
I agree, but I think, up until the point where he starts putting the pen on paper, it is truly a consultant. After that, the design work is architectural service.
I think,
But in the development of this project, by all means,
yeah, I
I
mean,
think consultant status is something you can straight face say, but it is gonna
quite honestly though, this is really the next step in this whole process, because if this turns out to be a $4 million project, I gotta believe that we're not gonna do this. But if it turns out to be somewhere that in a range that we can accept, we can proceed. So we're gonna need to know that one way or another soon because we keep talking about this every meeting, so.
Well, I'm wondering, Scott, I guess I'm asking for advice here, is knowing that where the project is there any reason to make this decision today? Is there a compelling reason to take this action today?
I think if you wanted to have a conversation with the architect, I think as it's been pointed out, that if this is a serious project, I believe, I would be completely surprised and very disappointed, knowing a lot of other information, that this would not be approved in the end. I think that the reason I think you got more of a hold on than maybe you got a no,
No.
not at this time. I think knowing the complete push from all angles to make this final ruling more accommodating is probably gonna give us a better answer. I think a more appropriate answer. So going back to, and Dennis and I chatted about this, is possibly bringing the architect over and Commissioner Clark or whoever, well, let's have a conversation. And in that conversation, are we completely crazy thinking we can do this for less than 3 million?
Right.
I know that, and kind of gauge from the architect there, or maybe the architect says, well, for 2,500, I can do some preliminary research and take a look at some things and go from there without going the full scope.
And that would come back to us anyway.
Right.
Okay.
So that's the US, if that was that, to me, that would be the advantage today, is you could take those next steps. The other side of the coin here too, though, is you're not going to do anything this year. Even if you went through this entire project, you're probably looking at next spring at the earliest. We have a little time. I don't believe we're going to get an answer in September.
I don't either.
I think January.
If we're lucky.
So that takes me back to another reason why I think my recommendation would be is to approve the architect if you're serious about this project. However, if you're still looking at 2.5 million, and now you're rethinking based off of a lot of the conversations with our money, that's too much, then probably I would nix the project.
I'm not ready to nix the project
Good.
yet, because I think it's a worthy project.
Yes.
But it's not a worthy project if we gotta pay the entire nut ourselves. I think everybody's on the
Yeah, I
same
don't think we
page there.
can. Yeah.
Well, I don't think we can afford that. So, and I think we need to select somebody so you can have that back of the napkin conversation. Right? Is that where because
I'm wanting a more firm number, because if a more firm number for a few $1,000s, we could get that more firm number, would tell us all that that's more than we want to spend. It's off the table. Let's forget about it. Let's start focusing on other projects, because right now this is occupying a lot of our time.
District that Maine.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm going to move, no, wait a minute, we don't have a recommendation.
So, how about-
At some point though, I'd like to see us hire an architect today, sit down with him and say, what would it take to get us a figure that we could be comfortable with?
Right.
And what would that cost us? That we try to push that through as a consultant to this project, get it covered under ARP funds, and if not, be prepared to cover those funds ourselves.
okay, so basically that's what your memo says. My opinion. So I'm going to move to approve the selection of Sealander Architects as the design team for the Sheriff's Office Accessible Entrance Project as recommended by the County Administrator and the County Facilities Director in their memo dated August 10th, 2021. The reason I'm doing that is because you need to have a back of the napkin conversation with somebody. You can't have a back of the napkin conversation with anybody until you select them. And once they're selected, then, once it gets beyond back of the napkin, they're gonna come back here and they're gonna say, Commission, you need to spend $2,000 to do this, or you don't need to spend anything, or,
So just a second. So
that's a motion.
Yeah. We need that motion seconded before we discuss it. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, now there is a motion on the floor. I understand your comments. Do you have any further support of that? Now, are we to understand then, Dennis, that Mike Sealander is going to sit down, do enough work to put together a figure that,
I think that the same experience we had with the ICC job, that preliminary concept and project scope development will be along the same lines. And I believe that was $5,000 to get us to the point where we were looking at a contractor and how much this would cost.
Yep. Mike might take his
Choose the
previous,
direction.
Mike might take his previous work and charge us again for it, and whatnot, but a lot of what we want to do down there, he is already understands through his work on the RCC, so.
Yeah, well, that's one of the reasons for the recommendation, and one of the reasons that I think that preliminary talk will be a little more affordable in that sense, and I think he'll agree. And he's already said, I have, some of the framework to start this anyway. So
But
that's an advantage.
you don't even have a proposal yet to do that. You haven't even had the back of the napkin conversation,
Yeah.
right? And you can't have the back of the napkin conversation
Until you get the team.
till you get the team. And then I totally agree with you, Mr. Chair. I think they're gonna come back to us because we're guessing. Anything else is a guess at this point.
Agreed.
Am I wrong?
You're exactly right.
You ready to call a vote? Yep. Okay, we have a motion made and seconded on the floor. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So you're gonna contact Mike.
Yeah, I plan to try to meet with him even later this week.
Yep, get a contract signed for his employment. Gentlemen,
Oh, no, get a contract.
I'm gonna ask him, we're gonna be in development of that
Yeah,
process.
you're not looking for more than that, right?
Not at this time,
Yeah, okay.
no, but
well, I mean, he's gonna, even for preliminary, he's gonna have a contract. He'll look at the scope.
we'll meet and talk and then decide, the scope of that contract. When that's ready, it'll be ready to you.
Gentlemen, do you want to sit down and talk with Mike before that, or?
Yeah,
Or I can invite him in.
that was my question is.
I would be more than glad to represent us on these preliminaries if you don't want to meet with him, but if you do, we could have him, we could either have a special meeting with him or.
I personally don't see a reason for the commission in its entirety to have that conversation. We have capable people, and if the commission wants to be in there, that's great.
Yeah,
Yeah, and that's probably a good idea.
So I would like to be there, Dennis. Let's see if we can get together with him, sit down, start throwing out some ideas and so on.
Well, that's the first step, is to relay what we have, what we envision, and then he comes back with how it happens.
Mhm.
Yeah, good.
Okay,
Yes, thank you.
okay, that's what I thought until, but I'll try to keep you posted, yeah. So,
this is really, I'm still thinking about the process with Mike, that's all. And I mean, I have some personal ideas.
Yeah.
What to do, but they're strictly personal. I mean, they're based upon having been involved in it, but I'm just wondering, gentlemen, if you want to do a walkabout or something before we meet with Mike, so that.
I think that may come like maybe even close to or after the first draft. I think I think your input would be as invaluable, as anybody. And between Dennis and I and what we've talked about, and then, I mean, because at some point, obviously, it's probably gonna be a bigger, no matter what the price tag is, we're gonna look to start,
Okay,
we
let's-
don't need this, don't need that, blah, 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 so.
Let's get him on board. Let's see where this goes.
Yeah.
At some point, see if we need to
Yeah,
sit down and talk again.
Yeah, back of the napkin is what we need, yeah, I like that term, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Broadband. I understand by your report that you've
You're
been,
gonna have to get your chair closer.
Yeah, so since our last meeting, Scott and I have met with Mark Roulette, who's the president of Axiom Technology out of Washington County. We've met with Brian Leopold from Casco Bay Consultant and with John Dougherty from Mission Broadband Bangalore. Really to sort of understand more of the scope of this whole thing. And as we sort of have talked through this, it's huge. I mean, there's more federal treasury money coming, there's Senator King's money coming, there's and it's flowing at different paces, from different streams. And, connectivity, Maine is one of the players here. The Connect Authority of Maine is another one. There's at least two in the state of Maine that are going to get funded. And as we talked through this, for me, it was just really trying to understand what are we really looking at. One of the eye-opening things for me happened yesterday with Brian, where he really talked about you have to have a map, right? This really starts with a county-wide map, and he has done this for other counties or municipalities that really lays out what's there now. I naively thought that already existed. It doesn't really exist. So, and he does this really by what I call a drive-by data collection and figuring out what's what and looking at subscribers. So that's generally what he does, is draw that out. And then there's from that's called planning. And then you have the whole delivery fund. They actually do provide sort of a funding formula for towns to look at to say, if you contributed all of your our rescue plan monies, and if the county contributed this amount, this would be your unmet need. So they sort of do that financial analysis as well. Again, a moment for me to realize we're not talking about $1 million or $2 million. We're talking
Tens.
or hundreds of millions of dollars. I mean, this is huge. And then again, legislation may or may not change this depending on, like, they're talking about how much bandwidth you have to have. That may change. So there's a lot to consider here. So one of the questions that I continually ask is it your recommendation to hold back and wait and see how this is all going to flow? And I think we heard unanimously the answer is no, that this pre-planning is what gets you ready to apply for dollars. So that the quicker or the sooner that towns, municipalities, the county can make a plan, they're ready then to start to apply for some public-private dollars that would help make this all happen. So we had our final conversation yesterday, but we had really followed up with a call to say, we think that, we might recommend working with this consultant, excuse me, versus any of the other two. All very three experienced gentlemen, all come with their own capacities. There's no bad one amongst them. It's just which one we feel can deliver what we really need.
So you have interviewed three, the only three. So when I first started, one of my thoughts was that I'd like to have somebody representing the county attend some of these other committee meetings that's going on in the communities. I mean, there are some communities out there who are trying to work and, having meetings to discuss this. And so at a minimum, before we could start doing those huge global tasks, we could just have somebody representing our interest, or at least going to these, coming back and able to report to us what the communities are doing and so on. So
Two of these three consultants are one-man shops. Only one of them has a 18.7, maybe I think the number was.
Yeah.
So I think that a lot of what but there's also a lot of information out there. I mean, all of them are well versed on what's going on in Blue Hill, what's going on in Des Moines, if not all of Hancock County. They all have pretty in-depth experience in different islands, different communities throughout the state.
do you think the one-man shops might be overburdened with representing us?
It was something in consideration, right?
Yeah.
Capacity. Do you have the capacity to pick this up?
So, I didn't mean to interrupt. So other communities have started some of this, and, I remember a map in Bar Harbor, many moons ago. I'm trying to figure out, somehow we need to communicate to the communities what we're doing, so we're not duplicating efforts. It sounds like a countywide map is a great place to start, and it sounds like that is what was recommended to you.
I agree. Maybe a countywide map, yeah.
Well, yeah, we haven't talked yet. Yeah, I'm kind of guessing. Yeah, absolutely. Yes, I was really impressed with that. And I think that the answer to both of your questions is kind of has already been answered, is that this is already going on.
Yeah.
I think there's a significant portion of Hancock County that is, I think, leaps and bounds beyond us, to be honest with you. There are many, though, that are gonna need some significant help. And again, I think what we found, and I think we could pick any one of the three and have it, is a resource for the county to do exactly what you want. And I don't know if general contractor is the right term here, maybe, but help them help themselves. So if you have an area that wants, and the best, this is a consistent formula, the best idea is for multiple towns to work together to form regions. But school districts, and they brought up, one conversation was school districts is really great. Well, sometimes yes, sometimes no. But they're all open and appreciative, experienced with what I call a hybrid approach. So whatever works.
I mean, we heard that at least one of them, that is exactly what they did. They approached towns, or they put gatherings together for a conglomeration of towns. So they've all used these different approaches to try to come up with this. My question remains is, so much of this is about the planning. You could spend a lot of money just on planning and not execution, and that we keep an eye on that to make sure that at the end, we just haven't spent money to plan something and nothing's been finalized, right?
So if we had a goal of developing a map, a county-wide map, how do we get, we need buy-in for that from the communities. I don't mean financial buy-in, but buy-in so that we all agree on the same goal. How do we get there?
I think that's the best, actually, for me. I think that's the best approach for you, is to have that. I think the individual, the consultant termed it as a foundation. And again, she and I have not had a discussion, so I'm trying to be careful. But I think we're kind of, in together here on this. But yeah, I think that's a great, and that's another aspect to all three. Basically, you want to make sure that the communities have buy-in. So this isn't just a matter of where we do it and then, and we just keep doing. That's not how this best process works. But I think this foundation is what I get going in my mind. This foundation may be one of the best things, the best kickoff that you could do for the entire county. And I mean, and I say and I asked him because I know that he was actually, the individual was recommended by a municipality. They're almost done, so, would you have to go redo their, well, no, they've already got that information. I know a significant portion of or what I'm being told is a significant portion of the Blue Hill Peninsula has already been mapped out. But his answer to that was, well, I've been told that before, but I'd like to see, I'll look at it and I may have to redo it. But they've all been flexible, very accommodating, very intelligent. Then again,
So right now, is there any recommendation that's on the floor?
from the two of us, no.
I think for me, it's always chicken and egg, right? What comes first? Some of these municipalities, I mean, part of me says the county would really benefit from a countywide map. But if some of these towns have already done the work, are they going to see that themselves? Are they going to see that benefit, right? So how do you approach and who do you approach first? We talked a lot about our monies might be best invested with towns that are almost ready. We're getting there the last mile, okay? I don't know, which comes first.
See, that's a good point, because if we expend huge sums of money to do a countywide map, and then you only decide you've got enough money for a couple of communities, and we wasted a lot of that money developing them.
Did you get the impression that was a large sum of money for countywide map?
I didn't recall the large sum of money. I think we heard a number up to 120,000.
Yeah, that was for, I think, a larger county with a lot more rural areas that
And I would
needed
think,
investigation.
because like he said, he'd want to review the data, whatnot, but I would think that a lot of these communities may have that map already done.
Maybe.
If they use the same process to develop that map that he uses, then you can almost accept that as.
And weren't there also grant monies available too?
So,
But there need to be again, that buy-in from somebody.
right, at least one of these consultants also works in liaison with the municipality to help them get ready and apply for the grants from Connect Maine or the state, wherever they're flowing. So, and it seemed I think they all have pretty good grant award history. So
Right.
they actually get the town ready because there's match and there's leverage and money to apply for. And then there might be town warrants that come up where, or taxation in order to raise the money. So again, there's a lot of moving parts here that also sort of speak to getting the towns involved fairly early on as well.
It's all that's triggered by that foundation, the numbers, when the one individual may be a little, in some regards, might be a little too detailed, but it was very impressive to see how it was laid out. And if somebody does that at the beginning, you can only, maybe your foundation is solid, then you can build a good product.
I'm wondering too, if we aren't preempting the work of this consultant, whoever this person ends up being, by saying that we want Matt to be our first project. I mean, are we thinking about hiring somebody because we want to do a map? Or are we thinking about hiring somebody to decide how we want to proceed? And
Well, I
if it's to proceed, I think we need that recommendation sooner than later.
Well, part of the issue to get to the recommendation is to kind of sort of figure out what you're thinking. And so hence bringing up, as Kitty said, I pointed out with the map, and you pointed out with a couple other items, is it a matter of dealing with towns that are shovel ready? And how much money do we spend? So kind of trying to gauge as to what you're thinking as to.
I'm not going to make those decisions until I talk to my consultant. That's why I've started written day one saying, I want somebody in here to do for us on broadband what Kitty does for us on A&P funds in general.
Yeah.
So that he can, because it's like his recommendation to us, he said, don't waste your time doing a countywide map. It'd be great to have, but as Kitty said, we have towns out there that are ready to, flip the switch. Let's get it in the hand and get something going. So I'd like to hear that.
It sounds like we're almost at a point where we don't know where to go, right? That's what we're talking about. So it almost seems like we need to go up to RFP for, get proposals, because, yeah, the map sounds good, but, it's that
Excuse me, RFP for what?
for consulting services and a plan,
I think that's what we're doing, but it's not an ARP. It's an interview process to find, which they have done, and they're going to come back to us with a recommendation on which one of the three that we should contract with to provide broadband.
Oh, okay, but
The kicker here is that she and I have not had a chance to talk since we met yesterday morning.
We wouldn't have to do that today.
In the early afternoon with this individual, and of course, between both of our positions, we have not had a chance to discuss this,
so this is premature, right? Yes, okay.
But what I'm looking at is the next step, and I'd like to see the next step, you two come back with a recommendation on which one of these three, if any, we should get contracted to be our broadband consultant.
When you're ready.
I think the thing to just keep in mind is these are three big organizations that have 1,000 other projects. So you're not going to have Kitty, who's coming to every meeting and able to, some of that stuff that's maybe boots on the ground. I think their level is, do you think that's true? Sorry, we haven't had a chance to talk this, but they're all extremely busy. They're working with other counties, other towns. So I'm not sure the level of detail.
You can't find a Kitty and broadband consultant?
We can keep looking.
Well, every county and every community is in the same position we are, right?
There is another name that came up. Yeah, Scott and I have not talked about this, someone very local that we could have a conversation with who lives in the county.
I don't want to make your job any more difficult than it is. I mean,
well, again, I think at this point, by looking at all the faces and my feel, she and I need to talk.
Yeah, and get to a point where you can make a recommendation, because you're not there.
Yep.
And therefore, I'm not even close to it.
I mean, I'm not sure how far we get today if Kitty had not been. So I mean, if this guy can only come to every other meeting or every third meeting, we're sitting here.
Zoom certainly helps, right?
Well,
Yeah.
perhaps.
The other thing is, we discussed this, I think that it's not on the agenda, but the draft letter maybe a follow-up call to these municipalities. It says, have you started planning? Do you have priorities, or is there a meeting that you're going to start planning? And let's talk about broadband, right? So maybe asking them pointedly 3 questions that I can get down on paper that may help us somewhere. I don't know, I'm just brainstorming here.
Are you asking for approval of this draft letter?
It didn't make it to the agenda, so but yes.
It's ARP business. It's with you.
But it sounds like you need, I agree that gotta be something else in that letter talking about
Right,
broadband.
or just a follow-up call, right?
Yeah.
Well, this isn't specific to broadband. This is basically. Yeah, it's basically introduction and an offer to coordinate funds, and I don't know what it is.
Assistant planning, answer questions, right? Let us know what your priorities are.
I mean, I don't see anything wrong with sending this up right now and just get it. You read it?
Yeah.
You see it?
Yeah, I do. I think we should mention broadband.
Okay. Stress
That's all.
emphasize it a little bit more.
Yeah. And the reason I say that it's in the legislation, and we've talked a lot about it, as have they, I'm sure.
Well, I'm concerned that we start picking and choosing what we talk to them about. I mean, Glenn would like to see us emphasize in here, has it paid for first responders? And
Yeah.
Well, I like your
I'd like-
follow-up idea. I like that. And by the time, so we get the letter out, by the time if we have to meet with another broadband consultant, by the time we see you and come up with a broadband consultant recommendation, you're probably talking 3 weeks to a month before. I mean, it's not something you have to do tomorrow. And that probably would be just about timely for you to start making phone calls and inquiries if you haven't heard from somebody.
I'm going to move that we authorize Kitty to issue the letter dated August 17th, 2021 to the towns on ARP funds. Motion made and seconded. Reference the motion. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Yes.
Aye. So let's do that. And again, in an effort to find out, to keep us informed as to what the communities are doing, follow up is a great way to do that. And we'll be asking you, what do you know about, I heard Sedgwick's doing something, what do you know? So, okay.
Great.
Is that it for today? Consider that fourth individual something that could be more personal to our needs and
Okay.
I'm sorry, I know you guys worked hard on the other 3 and whatnot, but it's just so nice knowing you're gonna be here every meeting when we talk about AMP, but I'd like to know that every time we talk about broadband, our consultant is somewhere that we can consult. Thank you very much. Let's move on to UT. And while I'm doing that, Rebecca, we always put the airport in UT first because they had to travel to get here. Well, here we've held Millard now for an hour and a half this morning, even though he's Zooming. Perhaps you could move him up when we get an opportunity on that. Airport managers on site all the time anyway, so. Millard, good morning.
Morning, Commissioners. What's on the agenda, kind of FYI for your information, the bid request for snow plowing at Fletcher's Landing. That's the same format we've used since 2013 for these bid requests. I've just put it together for to go out to bid. And would like your blessing on this.
I'm going to move to approve the snow removal bid request for Fletcher's Landing Road, Route 179, as requested and recommended by the UT Director.
Seconded. Motion made and seconded. Millard, I'm not sure if it's a fair question to ask you off the cuff here or whatnot, but do you think we could be better served by contracting for snow removal for whoever does Waltham?
I think the best case scenario there would be if we could do the same as we do with Franklin and Steuben. We contract with Franklin to plow Mountains Ridge Road. And whoever they contract with for the snow plowing is included in that package. Same with Steuben. We contract with Steuben to plow Village Road and Bogus Meadow Road. And whoever gets their snowplow contract does that. It keeps it in a uniform thing. I remember years ago, we had two different people, one doing the county portion of Mountains Ridge Road and one doing the town portion of Mountains Ridge Road. And they got into a little bit of a feud, and somebody would just plow the snow up in a pile and leave it. And the next guy couldn't break through the snowplow pile to plow his section of road. So it does work good with contracting with the towns. And I would suggest approaching Waltham and see if they'd be interested in contracting with us to plow Fletcher's Landing Road, and then just include it in their contract with whoever they contract with to do Waltham Road.
So that would mean that we'd have to hold off on putting out bids if you did that, right?
Yep.
Gentlemen, do you understand the situation here? For the last several years and whatnot, the contractor who has done Waltham has been a contractor out of Ellsworth, which means they travel right through Plantation 8, getting up there, although they keep most of the equipment, I think, up to Waltham now. But what Millard is suggesting is the same situation we do with Steuben and Franklin with regards to UT properties and those bordering those towns. And
Does the motion preclude him from researching that? I don't think it does it?
I think if we post this bid, it's going to preclude dealing with Waltham. I think the idea would be to postpone acting on this bid proposal and let me contract with the town of Waltham selectmen and see if they're even interested.
Okay, so
you're going to withdraw your bid.
so I'll withdraw that, and how about I move to table this item till the next meeting?
Okay, second's been withdrawn. Millard, I sprung this on you, and I really want you to agree with this and think this is a viable idea. So don't let me, I'm not trying to talk you into this.
No, I think it would work if Waltham's interested.
All right, let's give Millard an opportunity to do that. If they said, no, definitely not, we're not interested, we'll come back with this at a later meeting. Is that okay, Millard?
So,
Okay. Yep.
so how about, so I withdrew that motion, was okay with a second, so I'm gonna move to table this item to the first meeting in September. Does that give you the time that you need?
I think so.
Okay,
So we have a motion to
Table.
table.
table to the first meeting in.
Yeah, seconded.
Motion made and seconded to table to the first meeting in September 8th. All those in favor? Aye. Item D, Millard.
Yes, item D is the Trails Grant funding. I've got the request for funds from the Acadia area ATV people. And they're requesting funds be released. This is the first time we've done this, so I didn't know exactly how to proceed, so I brought it to the commissioners.
So all we're doing is approving the grant fund request, right?
Yes,
This grant fund request is to the state.
yes.
Or- Okay, so, yeah, we talked about something similar to this a few meetings ago, right?
Yep. And authorized me to do this, and
Yeah.
I have traveled the roads that they say they worked on, and they've been graded and maintained, and so I recommend approving the release of funds and leave it up to Brian how we proceed with this.
So I'm gonna move to approve the Acadia Area ATV Trails Grant Fund request as presented and recommended by the UT Director.
Seconded.
So all we're doing is approving that grant fund request.
Yes.
I was under the impression that the state of Maine would, or Brian would actually do any investigation of the request.
That's what he told us.
Does that sound, okay, I just want to make sure that,
Yeah,
okay,
that's what
This is the first time we've done this request for release of funds,
right.
and I just
Oh, that doesn't
want to
mean,
make sure we're doing it the way the commissioners want it done.
and if you have a moment to do that, I think it's good stewardship on your part to make sure that, yeah.
Oh, this is how I remember he wanting it done.
Yeah. Yeah, we're just the fiduciary.
Yeah.
Okay, so motion's made and seconded to release the funds from the ATV grant. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries.
Well, you said to release the funds.
Well, I'm just paraphrasing your
Okay,
motion.
good.
I'm just paraphrasing.
The county doesn't have any of the funds anyway. We're just telling
Right.
Brian that, the work has been done.
Wait a minute. What we just approved? I thought we had.
No, you're approving the submit for them to send us the money.
Well, I guess technically we are the grant recipient, so.
Right.
Right,
Yeah.
that's right too. So we would have to,
We're just okaying the grant fund request.
I believe, Millard, the funds, this check will come to us and then we have to disperse it to them.
That's the way I believe too, but again, this is the first time we've done it, so we're.
Yeah, that's normal with the snowmobile grant, but yeah, we'll find out.
do we disperse this to the contractors who have billed?
No, we disperse it to the ATV, Acadia Area ATV Trails people.
Okay, all right, so it's just a pass through to them.
Yes.
Yep, okay, all right, I understand.
Yeah, because the bills were to Acadia Area ATV.
Yep, okay. Very good. No, anything else from UT?
I had an email from the Airline Trail Riders. Wanted to know how to proceed with their request. So I said if they had it digital, they could email it to me or to email it to the county, but I haven't heard from them yet. So that'll probably be on next month's agenda.
They have a similar ATV
Yes.
grant?
Yeah.
Yep. That's fine. I think that's how the county could assist these.
Yeah.
Others, and I think that's good stewardship on our behalf.
Yeah, and if you can remember, Millard, to copy us on, if we don't get copied on it, to send us a copy of something referencing the payment, so when we get it, Pam and Monica will have something to go with the payment, something on record. Thanks.
Anything else, Millard?
I got an email from Dennis this morning that the tractor's got a leak in the radiator. So I've called Ingram's and got an appointment scheduled for Monday for them to look at it.
Is that warranty work?
I don't know until we know what the problem is.
Huh. Okay, very good. Very good then. Thank you, Millard.
Thank you, commissioners.
Get back to you. Cutting your hay. Okay, moving on with the agenda, we go to District Attorney. Michelle is here this morning. We stand Matt's in Augusta.
Yes, my apologies that he couldn't make it. We had a computer crash and our PWA is just back from leave, so we have to go get a computer. So I just wanted to update, I have worked on the job descriptions. I've compiled 5 new job descriptions, 3 for the legal secretary, 1 because they were distinct jobs, 1 for the legal secretary 2, and 1 for the legal secretary 3. We've had conversations via email with the county who didn't approve the job descriptions. So we're looking to have a meeting to find out definitively what they're looking for. The emails weren't really clear enough for me to make the changes because I'm not really clear on what the changes would be.
Michelle, I've been somewhat involved in this simply because I'm in the courthouse often and whatnot. And there's really no other way to put this, Michelle, but consulting with HR on a project like this is not an invitation. It is an absolute requirement. If you bring something like this in for our approval and HR says this is totally unacceptable, you are doomed, you're wasting your time and our time. We are very fortunate today, and I'm telling you this from 40 years' experience with this county and whatnot. We have the most astute, prepared, qualified HR office today that we've ever had in this county before. I want to share with you, if you come forward and grab this. I want to share, this is a memo we got from HR letting us know that there was problems with this job description. Now, you didn't have to take time right now and whatnot, but if you look at those, and you see how well HR has articulated the problems that are being presented with the job descriptions that you're proposing, you'd see why it's absolutely critical that you sit down with HR and not only tell them what you want to do, but ask them what you should be doing. Because to start with, I can tell you from experience, you do not hire somebody and then develop a job description based upon what they're doing. You do your job description, then you hire them, and that's their duties and responsibilities. You put the process backwards. On top of that, I've never heard of having 3 job descriptions for one position. I mean, that's just unheard of. And it's going to be hard for you to make a case to do that and whatnot. You've got to consider that you can't be so precise with your job description that it is going to hamstring you in other situations and whatnot. So the bottom line is, Michelle, you need to stop the process you're in right now and whatnot. You need to set aside a sufficient amount of time to sit down with HR and whatnot, find out what you need to do and what their recommendations are for getting job descriptions done. And that's what you need to bring back to us. Now, we went out on a limb for Matt a few weeks ago and whatnot, and approved his request on the condition that we would be followed up with job descriptions. And here we are today, not agreeing to the job descriptions and unacceptable to HR and whatnot. And I'm starting to regret, in fact, I had some reservations for him, and I'm starting to regret that we did this process backwards because we should have had those job descriptions in hand, approved, and you should have understood what they are before we ever made a decision on those, the way we decided the other day. Okay?
I feel that our agency has changed since the 2001 job descriptions were done. And that's what the struggle is, because maybe legal secretary 1 isn't the best way to approach it. These are 3 fairly different job descriptions now that we have within our organization. They have clearly defined roles that they can't be fit into one.
And that's the complications that's being presented here.
Right.
Is that if you have clearly 3 separate jobs, then you need 3 separate distinct job descriptions with 3 separate distinct titles for those jobs. And we need to come back and review wage scales and prove. But that is all stuff that could come to us, that should be coming to us after HR has reviewed it and talked with them, and they can say, we've blessed this, because you're nowhere near that today. So you can do yourself a big favor by sitting down with HR, devoting the amount of time and attention, listening to them, accepting their advice, getting it in a form that we can accept. Because if HR says you have my blessing, you don't have to do a lot of selling. It's a done deal. When HR says this is unacceptable, you're wasting your time and ours. Okay? Take this back, consider setting down, because that is an absolute requirement with HR. Get these in proper form and whatnot, And between the two of you, you can figure out whether or not we're talking about separate positions that need new titles, or whether or not we can make all three of these work under one job description. Figure out what that is, okay?
And we have spoke about meeting.
It hasn't been to the satisfaction of what you needed to get this done today.
Right.
Please come back and do that, okay?
I would like to say, there have been time constraints, and I do recognize that. We are planning to meet this week. I did come in on Saturday to work on them. It hasn't been that I haven't tried to work on them. The time to actually sit down, we are working on for this.
You need to start working and have a long sit down with HR before you do any more work. Because I think some of the work you're doing, you have the wrong ideas about what job descriptions are and what our process is for getting them done, okay? Your first and most important work on getting this completed is sitting down with HR. And we're going further.
Right, and we do plan to.
Good, okay. Very good. We'll wait to see sometimes soon because
I'm just gonna add that I don't see, a fire anywhere. I think it needs to get done, but I think more important than fire is getting it done right. And, this board should be, not, should be approving a final product that everybody agrees on. And until everybody agrees, I don't see that it needs or should come to us. I don't know any of this background, but to me, we need to see a final product that everybody agrees on, that we can take action on. And then, but until then, it's just not ready, on either side. To me, it's not important to assign blame. It's just what's important is that it's done right.
and it's never going to be ready if HR says this is unacceptable, I can't support it. It's never going to be ready. I mean, that's not going to be the end of the process. So that needs to be part of the process, and that's why I say it's not an invitation to sit down with HR. It's an absolute point. John, you all set? Okay, thank you for coming. Gentlemen, do you need to take a break? You all set? Our executive session could be anytime 10:30 on, so if we can move along on this. Yeah. Leroy, good morning.
Good morning.
Everyone,
I just got these three items. Request approval to go to bid for a new UTV by sealed bid. Money has been set aside, maybe even 2 years ago. Brad had it set aside, so.
and this is to replace, is this to replace one you already have?
Correct. The one we have will be traded in. That's be part of the bid specs.
Gentlemen, what's your pleasure?
Move to, so moved. He outlined it.
Motion made and seconded to approve the request. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Motion carries.
I nominate Brian Dunn of Otis to the Airport Advisory Committee for District 1 with a term expiring 12/31/24.
Seconded.
Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor of the motion? Aye. Motion carries.
I nominate Nathaniel Fenton of Lemoyne to the Airport Advisory Committee for District 1 with a term expiring 12/31/24.
No, just three.
Yeah.
3, I'm sorry. And that's correct. I'm sorry. I was reading the same motion. I forgot to. So
There's a motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Anything else, Leroy, this morning?
That's it for me. That's it for me.
Thank you.
Thank-
I want to take our attorney as soon as he comes and whatnot. Gentlemen, I'd like to indulge me this morning and see if we could do the remote meeting policy first and then go back and spend our time on budgets, if that's okay. Rebecca, is that you?
Well, I put it together for you. I focused on three things, really. One was You had two, well, you had one that you looked over before, and you had some suggestions, some concerns with it. So the three things I focused on were adding those suggestions to it, making sure the whole thing jives with the statute itself, all the pieces of the statute are touched on in this. And the other thing is making sure it isn't in conflict with our existing policies, our meeting and agenda policy. So that's what I came up with after those three things.
I went back and looked at my notes and I think that covers what we talked about. So I'm ready to move to sign and adopt the remote participation policy as presented.
I have to say that as, I mean, we were very proactive in getting this system set up and really inviting public participation, and that made this a lot easier.
I think it's working well so far. And we can always, you know, if we have to change or amend the policy, we can always do that. We got to start somewhere, and I think it's a great start. It's consistent with what we talked about.
There was one issue, Rebecca, and it had to do with the body making a determination that one of the members should not be, that the reason for meeting remotely is not appropriate or something. Is there anything, did we ever put anything in there?
As I remember the discussion and the issue was if one of the members of the body was dissatisfied with the vote, they could later bring up the fact that, hey, this member shouldn't have even voted, and so it makes the whole vote invalid. Was that the basis of what it was?
Yeah, but we sort of, I remember coming to a conclusion on that. Because I think I was the one that brought it up, but then I find this consistent with what I remember talking about.
It does address it a little bit in section 3. It talks about how the process for the member who would be meeting remotely, how that will be determined that it's an acceptable reason to meet remotely. And also in section,
When you say section, you mean
I'm sorry, number 4.
1.3 or A3, I mean?
No, number 3.
Yeah, right after number 3, A3, right after that.
A3.
It's on the second page first.
The first item on the second page.
And also under E, the policy does dictate that a member of the body who participates by remote methods is present for purposes of a quorum and voting. So
I think what I wanted to avoid last time was having to vote
Each
to
time.
allow,
Yeah.
right? That's not in here, so, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I remembered. You know, I had suggested that, but we came around to what, that you were going to determine. I don't know what that language is. It's consistent with what I remember.
I had a conversation, I don't know if Becca already explained this or not, but I had a conversation with Knox County. And I believe that's where that term, that paragraph came from, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, the rest of it is basically the same as Brewster draft.
it's similar. It's slightly different just to jive with Hancock County and with our existing, posting.
Oh, right, but I mean, the overall verbiage is, yeah.
Yeah, and this policy, like if I just got tired of coming to meetings and wanted to do remote, it doesn't really allow it.
No,
To do it.
yeah,
So that's what my concern was at the time. And I think this works.
In that first paragraph, second sentence, a member of the public body, does that mean the commission?
Yeah, yes. 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 And that's really the language that the statute used.
So if one of the commissioners couldn't attend and wanted to remotely, they'd have to notify the chair in advance?
If possible, as far in advance as possible, yeah. I mean, it's meant to be workable, so if you have an emergency on the way here and you can only meet through your cell phone, then, it's meant to work.
Okay. Anything further, gentlemen, with regards to the policy? Are you ready to act on it?
Just one, just a reminder that it needs to be, we need to hold a public hearing on it.
Yeah,
And then your official approval would be after the public hearing. So I guess now you'd approve a draft.
Okay,
Why don't they make this process so cumbersome?
coming from the legislature.
Legislature, yeah.
so my motion is in error. So it should be moved to adopt, yeah, because we're not adopting it, we're approving the draft.
Right.
And help me with the language on that, and schedule a public hearing for final, and schedule a public hearing on the policy. So, right?
Second.
So the motion is to approve the draft as presented, schedule public hearing on the remote participation policy as presented.
Okay, that motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
How would you do the public hearing?
Yeah, so I guess we would advertise that like any town meeting would be advertised. We do it 7 days in advance.
So would you attach that to a regular meeting and just have a
Yes.
portion of that as a
Yes,
public
that's what we've
hearing?
done before, I think, right,
Yeah.
Scott? We just have a portion of a regular meeting be.
Just attach that to a public meeting, a regular meeting and just have a public,
Yeah.
okay.
It doesn't really allow enough time to do it at the meeting on the 8th. Just, notice in the paper and that sort of thing. So, the meeting on the 28th, I think, would be appropriate for that unless you think otherwise.
That should work, so at least we can do it, get it over, get it out of the way.
Which would be the second meeting in September.
Yeah.
Okay, and schedule, so I'm gonna amend my motion to, if I could, if it's okay with a second, as presented, schedule a public hearing for the second meeting in September. Is that okay?
You think it's necessary?
Yeah, I think you need to schedule a public hearing for date certain, right?
That would,
Yeah,
I mean, I'm not sure, I can't see any issue with
No, just the thing is that we have a motion made and seconded and it's been approved. Now we got to withdraw all that.
well, we can put in the notes now. I mean, I can put in the minutes afterwards, the meeting will be scheduled on this date, unless you prefer to have it in as an action. Or you can simply make another motion saying.
We're gonna have to withdraw, it's gonna have to withdraw.
did we vote on that?
Oh, yeah, we voted. We voted on the original motion.
We did, okay, so I'll make a second motion, I'm sorry, I missed that. I'm gonna move to schedule a public hearing for the remote participation policy for the second meeting in September.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we ready to go to budget breaks? We have both of the department heads here. Can we presume which one of these is the quickest?
Nope.
Okay, so Dee says I'm quicker. I'll make this fast.
These might be just a little quicker.
Okay, we're gonna move to registry of deeds. Good morning, Madam Registrar.
I can fall asleep.
Hasn't been on.
Good one. That's it.
And what would you like to look at first?
We're looking at revenues.
Okay. So. My projections for next year are right there. I can explain anything you question.
The two big ones are the transfer tax.
Right, and
Fees.
And
not knowing how long the pandemic or the crazy buying is going to keep going, I'd rather go with what is a normal number and let the gravy be gravy. Because it is gonna end at some point.
There's an increase in both of those. Copying fees way down.
Yeah, because people get 500 free a year and they're using it as, you know,
Is that
they're,
a new policy?
no,
So why has this been reduced because of that?
because I've been taking it down every year to reflect what we're actually taking in. Because normally, like hopefully, was leaving the number out thinking we'd sell that many, but then we would make it up in a different line.
So in other words, you're,
Reality based.
It's steadily dropping.
You know, people are pretty computer savvy, you know. It's supposed to be 500 copies per person. Person means business, but they set up as many accounts as they want and try to get a different way.
Okay, so the revenue for 22 is $24,650 above 21. Anything further with revenues, gentlemen? Hearing none, let's move on. Personal services.
I put in that I added another full-time person. My rationing reasoning is that, I'm sure I have one that as I keep saying, is getting closer to retirement and it takes quite a while to train someone. And my other reason is you get so much time off when they get to a certain place in their career, they get 10 paid weeks off a year. That's a lot of time. And I have one there. I had two there. My rationale for that.
Let's back up here a minute. What is the number? Start 3% on over 21. Do we have that on the sheet?
3% over 21. Oh, so two things have been updated. One is just that the 5% that you voted on last week is in there. And in conversation two, we tossed around the idea of a 4% COLA. So I have adjusted the COLA to 4%.
Okay, so this- Yeah.
Okay,
The 9% is our estimates, not the manager's request.
correct. Yeah, all payroll numbers are
Not
typically
ours.
done by me.
They're not done by us.
Yeah, I let you know.
Well, I mean, obviously you have an opportunity to.
No,
Yeah.
you don't.
You have an,
Well, I mean, I can talk to him, but I mean, I can't edit that. I don't want to edit it. He's got too many fine figures in there.
okay.
So you agree with it?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
no,
Well,
that's what I'm saying.
No, that's important. I think it's important to point out.
Oh, yeah, no. We talk.
Okay.
I don't.
So, again, I was looking at your thing.
Oh, yes, I understand.
You've added an additional staff member
Yes,
to these. Did we approve that?
no.
No, I put it in my budget.
But
That's what I'm saying.
right.
I haven't added a person yet. I would like to.
You're requesting that through your
Yes.
budget. Is that
That
correct?
is correct.
and your reasoning is because you have an imminent retirement and the articulated reason.
Right.
Yeah, there's a lot of time on the office.
Aside from health insurance, it's roughly, I would guesstimate somewhere around 40,000. Base 33.7, so pretty 380.
Okay. And your employee costs are consistent with the wages.
Yeah.
Expenses did not change.
Just copier maintenance, I did get a new copier and I'm really not sure what the maintenance fee is yet, so.
The, okay, so there's slight increases just to. Yeah. She has no increase for maintenance repairs, contractual services. The maintenance is slightly increased. She just explained that. No increase in the equipment purchases and no increase in her reserve accounts. Gentlemen, any comments, concerns, suggestions? John, you all set with these numbers for today? Yeah. We're all set.
Good, see?
Thank you.
You won't, you're welcome. You won't beat that.
Okay.
IT.
Detail, you want to send as well?
You don't have any copy this morning? For you last night or in an email? Yes.
Yeah, one discrepancy.
Yeah, I think we threw that down a lot, but.
So how many full years have we had IT now?
This is third.
This will be.
This will be the third, right?
22 will be
I've been here
the.
too full.
When we talk about 5-year average, we're really talking about the last 2 years, correct?
Yeah.
We don't look at 5 years data.
No, but yeah, that would,
Right.
yeah, there's some, part-time data in there, yeah.
Now, refresh our memory, Scott. This year, 21. They had 25,000 from the reserve transfer.
Yep.
And that was why? Did we have a project? Why are we able to do that in 21 and not suspecting we could do it in 22?
Because that was to allow, we had a project, which hasn't been fully expended this year, but you're getting close, which was the,
Office 365.
Office 365. I want to call it backup and disaster. It's not, but.
It's our email project and our
Yeah.
.gov projects. What I do is on the Hancock side, we completed that. We've taken our old email exchange server and it's running on an old system. And we've actually taken it up to the cloud where it's more secure and you guys are using it right now. Office 365. And then we went to the .gov website. We've done that for the county, but we haven't had the sheriff's office yet. They're still running as .us or .org, which isn't as secure. I want to get them over to a .gov and get them off the Gmail. And I budgeted for the Gmail next year, so I'm not sure how quick I'll get to it. But they're paying $12 per user. I'm spending around $4 or $5 per user on Office, so it'll be a good savings. But that's the project.
That's the project for
That's the
21.
project.
You must have a lot of projects. I mean, so you don't feel necessary to fund the project for 22 under this?
I actually have said that we.
You're showing
7,200 is that the account?
14,900 well, it's the reserve. My question is that you're not asking for a transfer for this year, for 22.
I'd like to just keep the balance.
Right.
Be able to go into next year in case I can get it done this year.
Yeah. we were building the budget, if you remember, so we felt it prudent to bring in a transfer to help with some overages that we might be facing, some projects that you didn't get done the prior year.
He's stabilizing his budget now.
Yeah.
You're good. Gentlemen, anything further with regards to revenues? Hearing none. Move on to expenditures. And
In the payroll, it's the same scenario. I believe you're probably gonna notice this 3% COLA proposed. I haven't updated that.
so what amounts to the 5% this year and the 4% next year?
Yes.
Where did the 4% come from?
That was a discussion we had last week about catching up. I proposed 3, then we were talking about whether we wanted to start with the higher number and move, a lower number move up or a high number move down, and the consensus seemed to be higher number move down if we had to. So I think the first one for Chuck's discussion would be the Stillman conference.
Now, are you going to that instead of Raleigh?
No, actually, I'm suggesting that Raleigh goes. I kept up on it. I went first year. Last year was actually virtual, so I've actually had 2 years. And Raleigh has not been for quite a while, and I lean on him very heavily.
So you're gonna pay his bills out of your budget.
That's
I
correct.
got you.
And Raleigh is somebody,
Shares. Raleigh Beans,
I
yes,
see.
he's in dispatcher. And he actually teaches. So he's a very valuable resource.
He's been that part-time consultant with Spillman for years.
We're still thinking of alternating, so.
Yes,
yeah,
the plan is keep it my budget and maybe we'll alternate years. I'll go 1 year, he'll go the next. So
So if you remember back in the RCC budget, Bob would put it in his, we'll adjust that. I'll speak with Bob.
What is in this?
Yeah.
And it also is in the suburbs I talked to.
Yeah.
Pat about it as well.
So we can deduct that from both of those. So I will remember to do that. Yeah. Good. Supplies.
Computer supplies are up just a little bit, but that's really based on average expenditures.
and
What?
that's what that note is in your email. Right?
The increase due to, say, increases in wiring and costs.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right.
Utilities did not increase. So it's a pretty significant increase in your software.
Right, and I referenced that back to his spreadsheet. Chuck did a nice job with the spreadsheet. I tried to color code it.
It is what it is, right?
Well, these are the projects we talked about.
Well, these are actually in the 320. I mean, you're talking 1430, 320. These are actually annual costs. And Office 365 is an annual cost. ADG antivirus, your backup software, those are annual costs. And the thing is that I did point out in my detailed information I sent you is the ADG antivirus and the Acronis PC backup. I intend on doing that for the county. That's the cost that it would be to us if I got that software, did it myself. Right now, Sierra is providing that service, and we're gonna have a meeting with them to see if they actually do it for less cost. If they do it for less, there's no reason to change. But it's more than I'll do it myself, so I gotta get those costs. In budget, I put in a meeting, because I suspect I can do it cheaper than I can.
If you look at his itemized spreadsheet, there are some costs that have been converted over from the SO. And possibly, you know, as his budget is building and Chuck can identify the projects, but there may be some cost savings within that budget too, depending upon decisions on, you know, the server upgrade, which we'll get to in a moment. So first, Chuck, explain there's 7,000 out of the 9,000. Of that 23,050, there's 9,000 for Gmail and the whole 365 county email. But 7,000 of that is for the SO Gmail, but if you can convert it.
If I convert it, I probably would save around $3,000 a year if I get it converted to Office. So, but I want to budget for worst case scenario.
that I don't get to it, so.
Those licenses are based on users, right? So you'd be adding users, but getting rid of the cost of the other.
Well, it's cost per user in this case, because Gmail is actually around $12 per person and Office is around $4. So quite a significant difference, and multiply that out by 60 users for the SO.
Okay. Anything else, gentlemen?
Are we gonna work through his memo or, well,
Sure, I'll explain something.
Well,
Questions?
I have a question that actually
Sure.
crosses a bunch of lines here. And you talk about, PCs being replaced. My guess is you have them on a rotating basis or something.
I started that when I got here, Mike. When I got here, Chris had bought a bunch of them, and the ones that he bought in 2019, so everything I'm naming, I have it in the year in the name of the computer. So I have some that are 2019, 2020, now 2021. So I'm starting to prepare for that in the future, that I'll know how many are expiring every year. And the ones that I'm proposing to change have no date, no year assigned to them, so I know they're at least 4 or 5 years old or older. And in the case of the ones that I actually put down, I know they're 5+ years old just because of the process of this machine, how the machine is. So those are the ones I'm proposing to change now, by the way.
So, but my question was, is this year's hit bigger because of that? Or my guess is eventually you're
Well,
gonna
this
set
is
up
the
a
first time-
schedule and.
This is the first time putting my budget.
Yeah.
It's never been in mine before. Each individual department used to do it themselves.
Actually, I think it's not big enough. I mean, but it will suffice this year, but, and so there's some other, so in his technology account, as we go below two, though, he's got 7,500, and we have reserves that we could reach out to if he was able to get to more computer purchases, but what you described is exactly what he's efforting towards. So we have, 100 computers, they're 5 years, so every year is 20 computers. Well, there's only 8 listed here, so.
It's going to vary. Based on the year.
I gotta tell you, Paul, though, this is so much better than it used to be. It used to be that you didn't buy a PC till it crashed.
Right.
No,
Oh, no, well, that doesn't work.
no,
I'm trying to stop a 5-year rotation.
we've never had a plan and,
Well-
we scrambled to find money when it crashed because it wasn't in the budget.
Well, and the reason I was asking this is I'm used to this being sort of a CIP item that
Right.
you,
Yeah,
and I think that's what you're
we're getting there.
getting there, yeah.
We're almost there. It's, as Chuck will remind you, it's not what he didn't know when he came, it's what he found when he came,
Yeah.
so, yeah.
And this stuff's moving out of the departments and moving into an IT budget, so, okay.
Now, these departments budgeted in 22 for these PCs.
They hadn't budgeted for them yet. When I went to each department, I actually said, these are the PCs we need to replace.
They didn't have spent any PCs being placed. I just didn't know if they coordinated their budgets with.
Now, and again, like you said, basically, they were never budgeted. I mean, if you get a scramble to find money, or some departments, I'm sure the larger departments did, or probably got a hand-me-down if something crashed. You might have somebody replacing you held on to it.
The only yes spot may be the sheriff department. They have 20 mobile units that are out there, and that's probably still in their budget. And I was talking with Pat about those laptops, and they said that those are getting around 4 years old, 5 years old. So the sheriff department probably looking at replacing with 20 laptops in the near future for a year or two.
Geez, you replaced those since I've been here.
And that was prior to me, so it's been probably close to 4 years now.
So that should be addressed not all at once, but I mean, because you can't handle them all at once.
Exactly, yeah, that's why we say, we're doing it a step at a time, like he's pulling some individual things and working with the SO to make that happen. I did want to point there, and in that, out of those computers, there are 5 for the jail. And so, that's what we wanted to kind of get your attention on is that the intent rather than the jail by its own?
Oh, good question.
3 for the
Is it 3?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, 3, yeah, what's
Is bottom line.
a couple computers amongst friends?
Well, it seems to me that this should be managed here. Well, not here, but by IT as opposed to each individual department. I mean, the departments are IT people and
No, and this is my suggestion for the jail, because I know those computers and I know how old they
Yeah.
are. So,
But the issue is whether or not he should be funding those, the jail should be funding their own.
Right, that unfortunately goes back to that separation, you know.
I'm
jail has
saying
the
that-
money.
Is because they're capped, I'm saying as often as we can to, help them. Leave that budget, we should,
oh, you're talking, not for our budgeting purposes, but for the state portion of it, is that what you're?
well, yeah, because they're, what do you call it? They're an enterprise or,
They're kind of a separate entity, yeah.
separate
Oh,
entity.
I see,
They
so,
have their own funding, but because they're capped, they can't, they've got to live within a certain amount of money, and anytime we can help them
What I
with some of
have
their
done in the
expenses.
past is anytime I take a computer out and I find one that's actually newer than theirs, but somebody else has thrown out,
Right,
I'll take that up to the jail and update theirs to only a 3-year-old computer versus a 5.
awesome.
And my point is, just leave it right here. Just leave it right here.
And I would, because in another, just a quick conversation, is the rules have kind of changed with funding from the state. It's no more supplemental at this point. It's all by formula. So like, for instance, we have roughly close to a, I don't know, $200,000 deficit in the fiscal year, and we're only gonna get like 80,000. Now we can't apply for anything more. So now we gotta get creative again. Or this will help, in my opinion, this will help push new funding mechanisms, and we'll see what happens, but, so, yeah, anytime we can help out the jail, it's,
Geez, you could get the nose out of it altogether, let's find a rule.
well, I think that goes back to, again, the cap,
Okay, gentlemen, we gotta move along. Anything further? All set, John? Okay, I think we're all set.
the one question I would like to bring up, and I want you to expand on it, is he's currently, we're working with Katie to find out if the 200,000, is that what you,
That's the amount.
we need, and this is where I really need your help to emphasize, we need a significant piece of equipment, which is one server.
It actually will be 2 servers, one
So,
for disaster
explain.
recovery, one backup. What I've done is, for the funds that we've been talking about, I put in a $200,000 proposal to replace our servers. We have 4 servers downstairs, 2 for the sheriff department, 2 for the county. My newest one is 6 years old, the other one's 7, and the other 2 are 9 and 10 years old. And in computer world, those are.
that's what's gonna happen.
And I've got to the point now that I think we can talk about projects such as Pulse Point with the AEDs, and there's another section to that Pulse Point. I can't even put that on our system because of this system I have right now won't support that software. Software's too old, they said they don't support it. Also, our GIS for the Snowman system, which is the mapping software, I can't put that on, put it on our system, put it this way. I'm doing it right now and I'm working with Stillman, but they will not support the version of the operating system I'm on that server because it's older than what they will support. So we've got to the point now that future projects over Stillman and other areas that I support, the dispatch and whatever, our systems aren't adequate anymore.
So you're hoping that 200,000 will come out of the ARP?
We're hoping, but if it doesn't, and we don't have to have a decision today, I just want to have Chuck explain this to you because he is ready to, I don't know if you have that quote yet, but he's close to getting a quote. It's around 150, 160K, and then there's the installation of, so the total project was probably a little higher than what, but we went a little higher than, to cover it.
Probably use all of that because.
We will, yeah.
What I have, it's about 130,000 for the server, and then there's support peripherals, switches and stuff like that match up to it. That gives me up around 150. Other costs, labor costs to get it done, because I'm gonna have to contract some of that out to help me. And by the time I'm done, I'm gonna get around 200.
But we could be months knowing whether or not this is eligible.
Right, which is why I'm bringing it to you today is that, and again, I don't need an answer today, but just a general consensus. Would you find the funding somewhere? And I think Chuck, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think all of this is kind of a moot point, isn't it, if we don't do this?
Some of it is like server warranties, that will go away because I won't have to do those servers.
No,
It's not a lot of savings.
I'm sorry, yeah, this will be some minimal savings there, but what I was getting at is this is the new foundation, right? This, if we,
Are you saying that we could purchase these now and perhaps get it paid for later by ARP?
possibly, or community benefits, or
I
something,
mean,
or
this
reserves.
sounds to be important enough for us to
Well,
consider community benefits.
In reading the legislation, this this is part of this infrastructure,
When
right?
I talked to the company that I'm working with, a company called Scale Compute, and they said they've had numerous companies already buy systems through this exact project. Through these funds.
I'm confident, but, you know, I was pretty confident on the entryway too, I still am, I'm not gonna let that, but anyway,
But this,
But I'm more confident on this one than I
Me
am.
too. me too, good,
Well,
I just wanted to.
I'm more comfortable only because I'm comfortable taking this from CBA if you can't get it from ARP.
Right, that's what I want to know, is
That's
if we,
why, that's why I'm wondering, can we do this now and pay for the ARP later if
Yeah.
if it qualifies?
Yeah, I don't think we're there yet.
no.
But-
Well, how close, how,
within
Next meeting?
Would be able to order.
okay, so we'll have something for you next meeting.
And
And a recommendation.
the other part that this server will do, this server is actually just, it's such a large server, it replaces all four of those old servers with one server. And it allows me to take Spillman, which is next over in Ellsworth, and bring it back over to Hancock County.
So you'll have like virtual
There'll all
servers.
be virtual servers within that physical vault size. And like I said, it's actually two servers. The second part server is actually an identical server. My intent is to either set it up in the airport or talk to Jason and actually have it on Water Street in his primary site. Use black fiber to connect the two locations, and what that does is it gives me a disaster recovery site, so something happens here, that server stays online, and we don't miss it, a heartbeat, we're up and going, and there's no change.
Where's this site on Water Street?
He just told me that there's a, I don't know, it's a little building that they have.
Is that next to Dead River?
Down where the water.
Is that what's next to Dead River?
You said
No,
Jason?
he's at Ellsworth, actually.
Jason's over it.
Jason.
CIT group over it.
You said Water Street though.
Okay.
I think he said some more.
The city of Ellsworth.
Right next to Dead River.
I think I
think
know
that's
it,
what they're
yeah.
doing.
I think I know what you mean.
Okay, well, bring us something at the next meeting then, so we can take action on that.
Okay.
All right, Jason Moore, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Keep at me on that. We'll get started. Yeah, okay, thanks.
Get your motion for executive session.
Yes. So I'm gonna move to go into executive session as permitted by one MRSA Title 1, Section 4056E to consult with legal counsel regarding the commission's rights and duties when hearing abatement requests, and in particular, what actions need to be taken by the commission, if any, in light of the court's decision in the Knowlton appeal. And I'm going to throw in after a short break. Because I'm not sure I'm going to make
Okay,
it.
we're gonna take a break, and then we'll vote on that motion. Motion made and seconded? Second. We're gonna vote on that after the break.
Okay. The break won't be long.
Very well.
Good, how are you?
Good.
I don't want to be thrown in jail here.
How you doing? Good. discussion? We have a motion on the floor to go into executive session. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Just as soon as we secure now, Rebecca?